Everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the Madness to Miracles radio show, a radio show about recovery and addiction with the primary focus being on the recovery process. My name is Anisha Freeman and I'm your host. I'm also known as the locksmith because I make keys for people who are locked up in their mind. I also happen to be a therapist at the Flint Odyssey House and Saginaw Odyssey House. I'm also the clinical director of Saginaw Odyssey House. For those who may not be familiar with us, Odyssey House specializes in residential and outpatient treatment services. In our Flint location, we have a co-ed facility. We can take in men, women, we take in children, we can take in an entire family if people who are struggling with addiction and are looking for help. In our Saginaw location, we specialize in taking in women, pregnant women, women with children. We can take in single women who do not have any children. We can also service women who are seeking to regain custody of their children. We have outpatient services in Flint and Saginaw. We have our recovery houses at our in our Flint area, in the Saginaw area, and also in Port Huron. And so if you would like more information, or if you or someone you know is looking for help, feel free to call our hotline. We have a 24-hour line where you can call for intake or for more information. That number is 810-238-0483. And the Madness to Miracles radio show is actually named after an annual event that we host every September in celebration of National Recovery Month. For those who may not know, September is National Recovery Month in the United States. Last year, our Madness to Miracles event was held in Saginaw on September the 12th. We had, about 700 or 800 people there. I think that's the number, or somewhere in that frame. We had a guest speaker, an awesome keynote guest speaker. We had awards. We gave out awards to people in recognition of their accomplishments in recovery or service to the recovery community. We had live entertainment, awesome food, and fun and fellowship. So we will also host another event this coming September in 2019. We have not announced the date and location as of yet, but we will let you know. And feel free to come. It's free and open to the public. On the Madness to Miracles radio show, we alternate between having guest speakers and focusing on a recovery-related topic. The last few weeks, I've focused in on a topic, and I will again this week, but I do have a guest who's already been secured for next week, and they're going to be here to share their recovery story with you. So this week, I want to talk about the role of unrealistic expectations in relapse. I specialize in cognitive restructuring. That's my specialty, which means that I help people change the way they've been programmed to think. Cognitive restructuring is an actual therapeutic technique. That's my specialty. I specialize in that particular technique. And even the relapse prevention tools that I use are designed to help a person with their thought process, because we do know that the way we think affects the way we feel, and the way we feel affects our behaviors. And for people who struggle with the disease of addiction, and I like to say it like the dis-ease of addiction, a lot of their struggles is with the self-medicating aspect of addiction. They are seeking to change the way they feel for short increments of time. So in a typical relapse prevention program or group series, we talk about triggers, learning what triggers us to use, and what people and places we need to learn how to stay away from in recovery. We also learn about coping tools to replace the dysfunctional coping tools of drugs and alcohol and other dysfunctional behaviors that we use as coping tools. I also like to focus on relapse prevention on a deeper level. I take it to another level in a lot of my groups, and this is one of the groups that I do, putting unrealistic expectation on ourselves and putting unrealistic expectations on others. Now, that's not a new concept. I'm a member of a well-known 12-step program. I won't name or identify that program because it is the tradition of any 12-step program that we maintain anonymity at the level of press, radio, and film. So I won't tell what particular group I'm in. There's lots of 12-step programs. I won't tell you which one I am a member of, but I will tell you that in one of their, in some of their literature, they talk about how putting unrealistic expectation on ourselves and others is a big stumbling block for people in recovery. So I actually created a group to help people identify what those unrealistic expectations are that we put on ourselves and others, because it's one thing to say, to make that statement. It's another thing to understand what that means. What are the unrealistic expectations? Why is those unrealistic expectations a stumbling block? How do they make us feel? And how do we change them? Because it's easy to say something and it be true, but we also need to know, well, how do I use that truth? How do I use that information in a concrete way that I can apply to my daily life? Okay? And so that's what we do in the group. So first, I help people identify some of the unrealistic expectations they put on themselves. And that's going to be the focus of today's show. I'm not going to talk about putting unrealistic expectation on others. We may do that as a topic some other time. I'm going to focus on the unrealistic expectations people tend to put on themselves and how that can lead to relapse. So I have a worksheet that we do in my group, and one of the questions is I ask people to identify some of the unrealistic expectations that they put on themselves. Some people start naming them. Other people, I have to help them identify them because they've been doing it to themselves so long, they don't even realize that it is an unrealistic expectation. And for other people, what they're doing to themselves, they're not really conscious of it. It comes from an unconscious place. So you have to help them identify the behaviors that they're doing that's unrealistic. So one of the answers that I get from people is that they expect themselves to be perfect. They also say that they expect themselves to do everything perfectly. Now, those are two separate issues. They sound similar, to be perfect and to do everything perfectly. But those are actually two separate, distinct issues. So the be perfect, expecting yourself to be perfect, is an identity issue. And I'm sorry, but my nose is like really itching. The be perfect is identity. The do everything perfectly is a performance issue. Okay, so the be perfect, I got to be the perfect person. Everything about me has to be perfect. I have to be the perfect mother, the perfect employee, the perfect significant other. And so it has a little bit to do with performance, but it's just I have to exist as a perfect human being. And so the other unrealistic expectation is that I have to do everything perfectly. And so, well, what does that have to do? What does putting that unrealistic expectation on yourself have to do with relapse? Well, you're never going to be able to meet the standard. There is no perfect human being, and you will not be able to do everything perfectly. That makes it unrealistic, but not being able to live up to that standard produces certain feelings. So when we do this worksheet in my group, I give people a feeling that has columns of positive feelings and columns of negative feelings. So I ask them to look at the negative feelings and to identify how they feel when they're not able to live up to those unrealistic expectations, that when they're not able to be perfect, when they're not able to do everything perfectly. And some examples of the feelings that people have articulated are frustrated, inadequate, overwhelmed, depressed, trapped, rejected, cynical, panicky. So if you're walking around, and they usually identify those feelings for just one of the unrealistic expectations. We have an entire list. I'm not going to even be able to cover the whole list of unrealistic expectations that people have shared with me once they started understanding what I meant by unrealistic. They gave me a list that's too long to cover on this show. But just the feelings that they identify from one unrealistic expectation that they put on themselves was overwhelming. So just imagine trying to be perfect and trying to do everything perfectly. Okay, so let's look at some other unrealistic expectations. Some people have articulated to me that they expect themselves to be strong all the time. Like they have to be able to deal with problems without feeling weak. They have to deal with life tragedies and unexpected events and stay strong and carry an enormous load of responsibility and feel strong all the time. That is an unrealistic expectation. Like you can't ever break down and you can't ever need help and you can't ever need a break or need to vent to somebody. That is unreal. That's a lot of pressure. That's a lot of pressure. Life will throw you a curve ball and a right hook and a gut shot all in the same day. And you're going to tell me I have to deal with that every day, all day, and just be this strong person who never needs any help or support or who can never break down or need to take a vacation or a break. So once again, we go back to the feeling list and they list all of these feelings that they experience when they're trying to be strong all the time. And it's a lot of negative feelings. And so another issue is they expect themselves to take care of everybody else's responsibilities and keep up with theirs too. That is ridiculous. And see, earlier in some of the programming that we did here, I talked about core issues. I did several Madness to Miracle shows where the topic was core issues and how those issues, what they have to do with addiction. And so people who have the core issue of assuming other people's responsibilities, they're putting that core issue makes them put an unrealistic expectation on themselves to take care of other people's, I'm talking about grown people, and sometimes even children. There are some responsibilities that your kids need to be assuming that a lot of parents assume. So they're assuming these other adults' responsibilities. They're assuming some of their children's responsibilities, and they have to try to keep up with their own responsibilities. So once again, we go back to the feeling list, and we feel the same type of feelings. They feel overwhelmed, frustrated, angry, resentful, torn, panicky, trapped, discontented, and so threatened and provoked. So they're feeling all of these feelings, and you're going to tell me that you're going to expect yourself to be able to stay clean and sober with all of those feelings every day, all day. And we've only talked about a few. We've talked about to be perfect, to do everything perfectly, to be strong all the time, to take care of everyone else's responsibilities and keep up with theirs too. That's just a few of the feelings. Some of the clients that were in my group, that's been through this group, they can identify with the entire list that we generate throughout that group. Now, if one unrealistic expectation that you put on yourself on a regular basis can make you feel this onslaught of negative feelings, just imagine people who suffer with about 10 or 15 of them. And that's usually we only have enough time in that group setting to generate a list of 10 or 15. If they wanted to keep going, they probably would identify a whole bunch of other unrealistic expectations that they put on themselves. And so in some cases, in a lot of cases, those unrealistic expectations can be traced back to their childhood. That's another part of the worksheet that I'm not even discussing. The whole front page of the worksheet is helping them understand the origin of where those unrealistic expectations began and how they internalized, in a lot of cases, unrealistic expectations that others were putting on them that they have now been programmed to put on themselves. Okay, so let's do a couple more and then talk about the solution. I have no idea why my nose is itching. It didn't start till this started. And we're live. Okay, so another unrealistic expectation that a lot of people put on themselves is to accept abuse continuously without snapping. Now, these are people who are in dysfunctional, significant other relationships. They are dysfunctional relationships with so-called friends. In my program, I don't allow people to call people who are mistreating them friends because they unconsciously are starting to associate maltreatment with that label friend. So they have to put a prefix on it. You better put so-called friend or abusive so-called friend or something in front of that friend so you don't keep programming yourself to associate maltreatment with the label friend. And so, like, they are accepting all of this abuse from other people, and they don't know how to set boundaries. They never learn appropriate conflict resolution. And that's what I like about the Odyssey House program. They have it built in. We call it the encounter system, where people are expected to learn, and they're given the tools, they're expected to learn appropriate conflict resolution. And then we also simulate situations and life stressors where they're going to experience conflict, and they have to use our conflict resolution tool to address it, or they're going to be overwhelmed and upset, and they're going to act out because they don't have drugs and alcohol to use as coping tools. And then we get to pull them to the side in what we call a group and help them see you're only feeling like this and acting out like this because you are not setting boundaries. You are accepting maltreatment from people and not standing up for yourself. Okay. And because we all have issues, and it's not saying that people who are verbally and emotionally abusive, now we get to physical abuse. That's a whole nother thing. That's a cardinal rule. We don't allow that. You have to leave. If you put if you hurt people, you put your hands on somebody physical, that's a whole nother level of abuse. But when people who accept verbal abuse, any abuse is horrible. So people who accept maltreatment from others and they just keep accepting it, they are expecting themselves to be able to handle all that every day without snapping. Now, they may have been able to handle it somewhat when they had drugs and alcohol to medicate how they felt about being mistreated. But now that you're in recovery, you're not going to be able to do that. They got a whole television show that specializes in chronicling people who accepted abuse for long periods of time until they snapped. And that's the name of the show. And so in recovery, you're going to have to stop putting an unrealistic expectation on yourself to accept abuse without question. You can't, it's unrealistic of you to expect an abusive person. That's that other worksheet we do, putting unrealistic expectations on others. It's unrealistic to expect a person who struggles with being abusive to certainly get free from that issue because you're in the equation. Yeah, that's unrealistic too. So that now the responsibility falls on you to set the boundary, to use appropriate conflict resolution, to disconnect from that person if they don't respect the boundary. But it's unrealistic of you to think you're going to be able to handle all of that every day, all day, and be okay. So let's just review quickly the list of the unrealistic expectations I just talked about. To be perfect, identity issue. To do everything perfectly, performance issue. To be strong all the time. To take care of other people's responsibilities and to keep up with your own responsibilities. And to accept abuse continuously without snapping. And just imagine all of the feelings that a person would experience on a daily basis in recovery if they struggled with putting those unrealistic expectations on themselves. That's why it's a huge stumbling block in the recovery process. And that statement that I told you that was in that literature was in a chapter on recovery and relapse. Okay? And so let's restate those unrealistic expectations into something that is realistic. So to be perfect, that's unrealistic. What's realistic, Anisha Freeman? Well, I can work on improving myself, understanding I will never be perfect. I can be on this continuous quality improvement track with myself, but realizing, Anisha, you're never going to reach perfection, so you can just take that off the table, okay? To do everything perfectly, I can master skills, but it takes time. So if I'm learning how to do something and I'm new at it, I'm going to be a novice. And over time, I can master my skills, Yeah, I can become good at what I do, but everything is not my forte. There are some things that I will never be good at because it's not in my makeup. It's not in my DNA. It's not something I can't sing. So I'm not going to try. I'm not going to try to get better at it. It's just something that it was a gift I was not given. And it's no sense in me wasting my time on trying to develop a skill set that I'm never going to develop when I can be using that same time and energy perfecting something that I will be really good at, that is actually inherently something that's in me that I just have to perfect in mind. Okay? And so I can use that time developing what I will be good at. But see, the unrealistic expectation, it says that you have to do everything perfectly. So you got people spending years trying to perfect something that they were never intended to do. It's not in their forte. It's not in their portfolio. They were never supposed to even try to do it. Okay? And so to be strong all the time, like, it's unrealistic. Like, I can't expect people to take care of me emotionally. That's unrealistic too. That's that other extreme. One extreme, be strong all the time. Other extreme, expect other people to take care of me emotionally. Dysfunction lives in extremes. So the healthy, functional belief is that middle ground. And for a lot of us, we need help. I needed help from people to help me find that middle ground because I always lived in either extreme. Either I am trying to be strong all the time or I am expecting people to take care of me emotionally, wearing people out, just draining the life out of people, right? So I had to learn how to find that middle ground. I have a right to ask for help. I have a right to ask to be emotionally supported from time to time, but I also have an obligation to learn coping techniques and skills and get good at and practice and perfect using the skills. Now that is something you can perfect using your coping skills. Like, I don't mean you're going to do it perfectly. What I mean is that you can get to the point where you know what coping skill applies to what situation or what combination of coping skills can be. You can get really, 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 really good at that, where you're doing it like in real time without even struggling. I know, because in a lot of cases I have gotten there. But I've been clean 18 and a half years and I've been practicing. But so the middle ground is I don't have to be strong all the time, but sometimes I'm going to have to encourage myself. Sometimes I'm going to have to emotionally nurture myself. But I can also get help from people as long as I'm not wearing them out and expecting them to take care of me emotionally without any effort on my part to develop coping skills and techniques on my own. And then for take care of other people's responsibilities, I can take care of my responsibilities. I can help others from time to time when it's appropriate. And I could ask for help. So that is like three components. Like, I can help people. Sometimes people are overwhelmed and they're going through a period of time where they need some help. Like, they've had some tragedy and they trying to juggle a lot of stuff, or they've been injured or hurt or they got sick and they need some help. That's not what I'm talking about. That unrealistic expectation of assuming other people's responsibility, it doesn't have criteria for you helping people. It just say you got to assume other people's. That's unrealistic. You just got to assume other people's responsibilities. But the realistic one is that I can help people from time to time, but I'm going to take care of my responsibilities. That is a priority. But I can help others. And there may be times where I need help from others, but I will not enable a perfectly capable person to be irresponsible. Like, when I was working with drug court and sobriety court, I would have people, clients would call me because their probation officer told them they had to call me and make an appointment. And a lot of them struggle with the core issue of learned helplessness. And I would not help them with continuing that core issue. I started out giving them therapy when they made their intake appointment. Because they would be like, well, Miss Freeman, you've given me an appointment for next week, and that's the ways out. Can you call me and remind me of my appointment? And I said, absolutely not. I said, I will wait on this phone. I will hold on while you go get a piece of paper and a pencil. Now, if they had some cognitive issues or some other things like that, then yeah, I would have called them. Okay? But I was telling them, absolutely not. I will not call you next week. That is not my responsibility to keep up with your daily schedule, because then I have become your secretary. And I am your therapist, and I am being paid to work with you as a therapist. Now, I can call the court and see if they would also add secretarial fees to my fee, and then maybe I can keep your schedule, you know? And I said it in a joking manner because I've learned how to use humor. You know, a lot of them didn't think it was funny, though. I thought it was funny. But they would go get that piece of paper, and this is how I help them not be mad at me. I wouldn't be overly concerned because as a therapist, my job is to help you, not get you to like me. So what I told them is that you should be suspicious of anybody who will do for you what you can do for yourself. They may need to help you learn how to do it. You may need time to practice it, but I don't want you to be dependent on me the rest of your life. You're going to have to keep up with your own schedule. Part of their requirements is that they have to be gainfully employed and or going to school in order to graduate from that program they were in. So your professor ain't going to call you and say, you know, you got a paper due tomorrow. You know, so I was helping them. Your boss ain't going to call you every morning and say, are you woke? You know you got about an hour and a half to be at your job. So I'm just making sure you're up. Your boss is not going to do that. So it wasn't my responsibility. But sometimes you have to teach people who have not been responsible. They haven't had to be. You'll shock them if you just don't help them at all. So you have to teach them how to be responsible. And then I can't expect we're in the home stretch. I can't expect abusive people to stop being abusive. What I can do is use boundaries to teach them how to treat me. And if they won't respect the boundaries, then I'm going to have to redefine the relationship. And some of the redefining may be that you are now a random encounter instead of a significant other or a friend or an associate. You know, you have become a distant random encounter. Somebody I see at the stoplight and wave and take off real quick, okay? So that is my topic for today, the role of unrealistic expectations in relapse and focusing on the unrealistic expectations that we put on ourselves. Because if you're living from a realistic standpoint, I'm talking about some of your expectations should be challenging. They just don't need to be unrealistic, okay? And so you're going to have to go. We also talk about a bunch of techniques of how to transform from unrealistic to realistic, because you're not going to do it just because you filled out the nice shiny worksheet. So I don't have time today to go over that strategies, but I have a list of techniques to help people internalize realistic versus unrealistic expectations, and they've proven very effective. So that's all for our show today. Once again, if you need some help, if somebody you know and somebody you know they need some help and you want to find out more information, or if you yourself need some help, you're struggling with addiction, give us a call. We can be reached 24 hours a day at 810-238-0483. Again, that's 810-238-0483. I'm sorry, 0483. So thank you for joining us on the Madness to Miracles radio show. This is Anisha Freeman, your host, giving you the keys you need for a wonderful life. I'll be back next week right here on WFOV 92.1 LPFM Flint. Our Voices Radio, determined to make a difference. Tune in next week. And remember, I'll have a guest speaker who will share her recovery journey with us. She also happens to be a recovery coach at one of our recovery houses. So I'll see you next week. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.